डॉक्टर बाबासाहेब आंबेडकर ओपन युनिव्हर्सिटी.
Namaskar dear students, I am Dr. Himanshu Patel. I welcome you all for the course on cross-platform application development using Flutter. In today's session, we are going to discuss one important state management technique called provider. So friends, welcome to this session on state management with Flutter. In this lecture, we will be focusing on the provider package, which is one of the most beginner friendly and powerful state management solutions available for Flutter. Whether you are new to Flutter or already building app, understanding how to manage state properly is essential. Now let's dive into how provider can help us write cleaner, more maintainable and reactive Flutter app. So what are the learning objective for the session? So here is what we aim to achieve by the end of this session. First, we understand what provider is in Flutter and why we use it. Second, we will learn how provider works under the hood. Third, we will explore the different types of provider available and we apply best practices when using provider. We also recognize the limitations of provider. Now these learning goals will give you a solid foundation for implementing provider in real world app. So now let us try to understand what is provider in Flutter. Provider is a state management library in Flutter. In simple terms, it allows you to store data in one place and access or update that data from anywhere in the widget tree. It builds on the top of Flutter's inherited widget and makes it easier and cleaner to manage app-wide or shared state. For example, if you want to keep track of user login status of theme preferences, provider makes it simple to maintain and update that data across screen. Let us understand why do we need provider. In Flutter, apps are reactive, meaning widgets rebuild automatically when the data they depend on changes. While we can use set state for small widgets, it becomes meshy and unmanageable in large applications. Now provider solves these by making shared data accessible throughout the widget tree, rebuilding only those widgets that depends on the change data and keeping business logic and user interface code separate. Now these keeps our code organized and easier to maintain. So let us try to understand how provider works. Let us see how provider works in 4 simple steps. First, create a data model class using change notifier. This class will hold your app state and notify listener when data changes. Second, wrap your widget tree with change notifier provider to provide the model to your app. Third, use context.watch or consumer widget to access and listen to changes in the state. And fourth, call notify listener method inside your model whenever the data changes. Now this tells all listening widgets to rebuild. This pattern ensure that only the relevant part of user interface are updated, not the entire screen. So this is how provider works. Now let us understand different types of provider. So there are different types of provider in the provider package. On screen you can see change notifier provider, which is the most commonly used. It listens to a class that extends change notifier and rebuilds widgets on changes. Second type of provider is called provider or base provider. This is the base form. It is used for static or immutable values that don't change over time. For example, configuration, data or app constant. The third type of provider is future provider. It provides data from an asynchronous operation such as fetching user details from an API. It rebuilds the user interface once the future completes. The fourth type type of provider is stream provider, which is best for real time or continuously updating data like chat messages or live location. Fifth type of provider is multi-provider, which is used to register multiple providers at once. Now these avoids deeply nested change notifier provider and keeps code clean. Now each type serves a specific purpose, and knowing when to use which one is key to efficient state management. We are going to get demonstration of two app use provider package. So here on screen you can see this first example which demonstrate how to use provider for managing and toggling between light and dark theme in a Flutter app. So let us see how it works first. So here you can see initially light mode is on. This is my switch. When I make on, dark mode is on. Again I can switch back to light mode, and I can switch between dark mode and light mode. To manage this switch we have used provide. Here we define three essential files. First is theme provider, which contains the logic for managing the app. Second is a main.dart file, which is a main entry point for our app, and this entire screen is a home page. Inside home page we display user interface screen with switch to toggle theme. This is a switch, right? This entire section is our home page. Theme provider maintains logic for managing the app, and there should be obviously main entry file, which is exe2_provider.dart file in this case. Let us take one more example using provide. This is a second example which maintains to-do list. So here you can see we have one screen. Inside that we can create a list. At bottom you can see there is a text field. Inside that you can add new task, and whenever you click on this add button, it will add that task into list, and once it is added you can delete that list also. So let us see how it works. So this is my initial screen, right? Inside list there is nothing, and this is my text field, and this is my button. Now whenever I type new task and press add button, it will be added to my to-do list, right? So I have type one task and add button, add that task inside list. Similarly, I can add more task by clicking on add button. So here I have added 3 tasks. Now once it is added, you can check that task to strike through that task, and by clicking on delete button you can delete that task from the list. Similarly, you can add new task and update list whenever add button is pressed, and you can also remove task by selecting and clicking delete icon. So in this case we have also used provider for state management. Now here we have 3 files. First is a to-do provider.dart file, which is a provider which maintains our logic. Second is a main.dart file, and third one is a screen, which is a to-do app, which is a user interface screen with a to-do list. Now let us understand code for these. So this is my main file, then we have a home page file, and we have a theme provider. There is a clear distinction between user interface and logic. So first we understand this provider file. So here you can see this is my theme provider file. Now remember, you must define one class which extends change notifier, and inside that you must manage your state. So I define this theme provider which extends change notifier, and inside that our state is either true or false. So it is a boolean variable with name underscore is dark mode, which is initially false. That means light mode is on. Here I define one getter method to expose the current theme mode, which may be true for dark and false for light. So this getter method returns is dark mode value wherever it is called. Another getter method I define to expose the current theme mode, which may be light or dark. Now it can be used in material apps theme mode property. So our return type is theme mode and method name is current theme. So if this variable is set to true, it means we must return theme mode dot dark. If this variable is false, we must return theme mode dot light. Last, we define one function to toggle between light and dark mode. So what these function do? This is a function to toggle the theme between light and dark. It updates each dark mode and notifies listener. So user interface will rebuild. So when I call this method, it says each dark mode should be complemented or flipped. Here I write down not and variable name. So if it is true, it's set to false. If it is false, it will be set to true. So it will flip the boolean value, and once that value is changed, we must notify listener so that your user interface can be changed. So notify listener method notify all widget listening to this provider. This is my provider class. It is very simple. You must maintain logic here. Now second is a home screen. So here we define our user interface. First we import material.dart package to use material design. Second we import provider package to use state management. Third, we must import theme provider.dart file. Now why we write down separate dart file? So that better readability of code and separation of user interface and business logic. So I have separately written this theme provider that we have just discussed. Then this is a home page screen which is a stateless widget. This is my constructor, and inside that I must write build method. Inside build I access theme provider using provider.off method, which allows us to get the current theme state, which may be dark or light, and also call functions like toggle theme. So this is a theme provider object which is set to provider.off method, and this is my class name that we have already defined. It will create theme provider object. Now using this object we can call that method. Inside build we must return widget. So I return scaffold, which provides the app's visual structure like app bar, body, etc. Inside app bar I specify title as a theme switcher that you can see in emulator. After that we specify action. So this switch is specified in a action which is generally displayed in right top of your app bar. So inside actions I define one switch. Now what is its value? It is represented by boolean variable. Initially it is false. Value of switch is a theme provider dot is dark mode, which is initially set to false. Whenever I change this, I must change that value or complement or flip that value so that my theme mode can be changed. So inside on change I write down theme provider dot toggle theme. It means if it is a dark mode, it should be switched to light mode. If it is light mode, it must be switched to dark mode. Here I call theme provider dot toggle theme. And remember, inside that we write down notify listener. Here you can see we call notify listener. So it notify all widgets listening to this provider. Now this build method will be called and it will change my theme. So after that we specify this body part. Inside center I want to display text which specify which mode is set. So here I write down using conditional or ternary operator. If theme provider dot is dark mode is true, we must set dark mode is on, and if it is false we must display light mode is on. And after that we specify its text style. Its font size is 24. So these specify our user interface. Theme dot provider specify our logic, and now we must call these home page widget inside run app. So here I write down my main method. So here we have import material.dart, provider.dart, theme provider.dart and homepage.dart. And inside main method I call run app, which set our initial home screen. So we must call these change notifier provide. So we want to wrap entire widget tree inside theme provider. So that's why we must write down change notifier provider, and inside that we must create theme provider instance. So inside create I write down return theme provide. So it means this run app widget can listen to that notify. And inside child I specify my app, which is a user interface screen. My app is again stateless widget. This is my constructor, and inside widget I specify build method. I return material app. Initially my theme is theme data.light. So these theme represent light theme. This dark theme represent theme data.dark, and these mode represent current theme, which is initially light. So inside home, I specify home page that we have just learned, and this debug show check mode banner is set to false, so you don't see any banner here. Now how it works? Inside main, I set run app, and inside that I use change notifier provider, and my child is my app, so my app can listen to this provider. Inside my app, I set home screen as a home page, and I define these three data, which is a light theme, dark theme, and current theme. This is how our provider works. Now let us understand second example. On screen you can see my app is running inside emulator. Again here there are three files. First is a provider file which defines our logic, app which is responsible for displaying this user interface, and there is a main file which specifies our change notifier and home screen. Here first we understand provider. So we must import this material.dart to use material design. Now here we define one class to do provider which again extends change notifier like previous example. Now here what state we want to maintain is a list. Whatever list we want to maintain here is specified by these to do's which is of type list, and it specifies this class. So it is a list of to do's. Now first we understand this to do class. So here you can define model class representing single item. Now say for example here I write down one task and add it. So here you can see there are two data. One is a boolean value which represent whether this item is selected or not, and another is a text which represent my task. So here inside to do I specify two things. One string title and another value called boolean is done, and this is my constructor where this title is required, but this is done is set to false because initially it is unchecked. So inside constructor we must specify this task, but this is initialized to false by default. When I click on this, it is a toggle switch between is done or not done. So this is my to do class. Let us understand this provider. So here we maintain one list of type to do class. Then this is a getter method to access the list of to-dos. This is again method which adds new to-do item and notifies listener. Remember, when this interface should be updated, whenever some item is added to list, or whenever some item is deleted from the list, or whenever some item is checked from the list. So first we define this add method which accepts string title, and here we call add method of this list to add item. So inside add I create instance of to do type object, and remember initially it is unchecked, so title is compulsory which is provided as an argument, and once that item is added we must notify listener to update user interface. Whenever I remove this, the list must be updated. So we define remove to do method which takes index of a item to be removed, and here I call remove at method of list which removes item from list at specified index. Whenever item is removed we must notify listener, so I call notify listeners. And finally there is a method called toggle to do. So toggle the is done status of to do item and notify the listener. Here whatever item is added, for example if this item is checked, here we got 1 as an index. So we must toggle done and notify listener. So it triggers rebuild. So I hope you understand this provider class which specifies our logic, add item, remove item, and toggle state. Now let us understand our user interface. So here is my user interface to do app. Now here you can see we have imported material.dart file, provider.dart file, and to do provider.dart file. Here I define one to do app class which extends stateless widgets. This is my constructor, and inside build I return material app with title, to do with provider, and home screen as a to do home page, and our debug show check mode banner is set to false. Now let us understand this to do home page which is responsible for user interface. So here I define class to do home page which extends stateful widget. This is my constructor, and we must maintain state. Whenever we use stateful widget we must define this create state method which returns state of type to do home page state. So below that that I define class state which extends state of type to do home page. Now to use this text we must define its controller. So here I define text editing controller underscore controller which is set to new instance of text editing controller. Now inside build I get object of to do provider using provider.off method, and here we must specify the name of provider which is to do provider in this case. Inside this I return scaffold which specifies app bar and body. In app bar you can see we write down to do list. App bar it sets title to text to do list, and inside that I create column with list. So inside column we specify children. So first is expanded. Inside expanded I specify child which is consumer of type to do provider. Inside that I must return builder. It takes 3 arguments: context, provider and child. Inside that I return list view. Now we know how to create list view dot builder to create list. So this is item count which is a length of to do's list defined inside provider, and we must build each and every item available inside to do's. So here I use item builder with context and index, and here I create one object to do which refers to particular item from to do's list. So here I write down provider dot to do's index. So one by one it render all the items inside this to do. We must specify list tile, and inside leading I specify checkbox. Its value is to do dot is done. If it is a check it should be unchecked. If it is unchecked it should be checked, and whenever it is changed we must call provider dot toggle to do with specific index. Now next is a title which is a string. Now remember here I write down title text which specifies title from to do, and its style is a, if it is done means check, then we must display these lines. If it is unchecked we must display normally. So here it specifies if to do dot is done then we must strike and delete, and if it is not checked it should be null. So decoration is used with line through which is only set if our to do is done. The inside trailing we specify this icon which is a icon button which refers to icons dot delete which is already available, and whenever I click on that I must call remove to do method so that that item is removed. This is how we define our list. After that we must define this input area and these elevated buttons. So I specify padding and it is set to 12 pixels from all edges, and inside row I specify children. These are children, text field and elevated button. So inside that I use expanded, and my child is first is a text field. Its controller is a controller that we have already defined, and its decoration is a add new task as a label text that you can see here on top. Then there is a size box to leave space between an elevated button and text field which is 8 pixel, and after that there is a elevated button. Now whenever this button is pressed we must get this text, create to do and save inside list. So here inside text I get whatever text typed by user without any leading and trailing space, and if text is not empty, that means something is entered, I can add that to list. So here I call to do provider dot add to do method which add this text to our list, which in turn calls the notify listener method which rebuild this user interface, and last is a text for button which is add. So this is my user interface. Now let us finally understand main.dart file. So these are the 3 packages. Here inside run app I must use this change notifier provider, and inside that I must return instance of provider which is to do provider in this case, and my child is set to do app which displays our user interface. So I hope these 2 demonstration you have clear idea about provider. We must define provider class, we must define user interface, and we must call them inside our main function. These are the 2 demonstration we have created using provider. So there are many types of providers. So let us get summary of provider. On screen you can see different provider like change notifier provider, future provider, stream provider, multi provider. There are use cases given and data type is also given. So change notifier provider is useful for dynamic data which notifies user interface and its data type is change notifier. Basic provider is used for static or read only values and you can use any data type with that. In future provider, we can use one-time asynchronous data and data type must be of type future. Stream provider is generally useful for real-time or continuous asynchronous data and its data type is stream. And multi-provider is generally used for grouping multiple providers and its data type should be list of provider. Now, let us discuss some best practices using. On screen, you can see some of the best practices for using provider in Flutter. First, use change notifier for dynamic state. Second, wrap your app or specific part of tree with change notifier provider that we have already seen in the demonstration. Use context.watch for listening and rebuilding user interface. Use consumer for fine grade rebuilding that we have already used in to-do list. Avoid logic in the user interface layer. Remember, we have separated both the things, user interface and business logic. Don't call notify listener unnecessarily. You should call notifier listener only when necessary. You must test your providers. You must use providers only where it is needed and you must dispose of controllers manually if needed. Structure your code for maintainability. That we have already done. We separated user interface and business logic and main file. There are some limitations of provider. It is good for medium to small size app, but there are some limitations of provider. First, we must manually call notifier listener, otherwise UI update cannot be done. Second, there is no built-in support for events. Then there is a limited synchronous logic. Then tight coupling between UI and logic. There may be some scalability issue if your app size is very large. Then you must rebuild entire widget and there is a lack of fine grained control and finally testing requires more setup. These are the some of the limitations of provider that you must keep in mind while using provider. To sum up what we have learned about provider, first it separates business logic from user interface. It offers simple, efficient way to manage and share data across your app by using the change notifier model. With a provider, you can keep your user interface and business logic separate. You can rebuild only the necessary widgets when data changes. You can write clean and maintainable code for small to medium size app. And provider is a great starting point for learning state management in Flutter. Simple to implement, easy to understand, and powerful enough for many real-world applications. However, like any other tool, it has some limitations, especially when dealing with complex or asynchronous logic. So, I hope you enjoy demonstration. Thank you and happy learning with Flutter.